To the Point with Michael Williams.
Good morning. My guest today, longtime WPTV political analyst Brian Crowley and Palm Beach Post political editor Antonio Fins. Familiar faces, two of the very best, have been out on the political trail, we'll just say for a long, long time. Gentlemen, my challenge today and opportunity was get out your political notebooks. Let's keep it Florida-centric, and goodness knows with Mar-a-Lago just down the street and everything's happening here, we could fill a lot more than a half hour. But Brian, we'll begin with you. What's top of mind?
Well, speaking of Mar-a-Lago, you know, Laura Trump, is Ron DeSantis going to pay attention? Is Ron going to listen to Don and make Laura Trump the next United States Senator from Florida? She has lived in this state all of 3.5 years, so nobody knows it better than she does. And he's been getting some pressure from President-elect Trump to appoint her.
On his way to becoming defense secretary.
Because Marco Rubio is going to become Secretary of State. And
I was talking Governor DeSantis. We're still waiting to see would that nomination happen. Yeah.
But so DeSantis and Trump have, let's just say, have had a dicey relationship over the years. And I think, and DeSantis is also the kind of guy who doesn't like to cave in on stuff, you know. Right. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not he caves into the pressure to appoint her to be our United States Senator. But as I said, is there anybody more qualified? And
I reserved a good chunk of the second block of our broadcast to talk about Governor DeSantis and his future. So a nice taster there. And of course, tongue-in-cheek, whether Pete Hegseth passes muster as defense secretary could influence what happens with the president-elect picking Mr. DeSantis. And we'll dive into that a bit more. Antonio, first thoughts here.
Well, first of all, let me just say that this political year seemed like to have been an entire career. Yeah. I don't know how many things happened. We had, two assassination attempts, although a very serious matter, and then you had the switching of the Democratic nominee. That at this time last year, we all were looking at what we thought would be a Biden-Trump rematch too, and it didn't turn out that way. You know, the one thing going into the year, we knew that Florida was the Trumpiest state in the country. We knew it was definitely a solid red state. The question was Florida an outlier to the rest of the country? And I think this election shows not really. Maybe we are more conservative than most of those other red states out there. But boy, I don't think this election, I think it proved that, in fact, Florida really is not an outlier. It is the bellwether for conservative politics, where the Republican Party is today by and large. And quite frankly, where a lot of Florida is. If you look at how many counties did the vice president win? Maybe 5, I think. I counted a handful. So there's even fewer than they won in 2016. So that's, I think, one of the key answers we got this year.
And I want to touch and dive into that a little more deeply because it goes to some of the discussions about demographics. Democrats who thought they had a lock years ago on Hispanic voters, black voters, Florida, a bellwether, in many ways a mosaic of more and more demographically what the country is looking like. So Brian, dive in on that a little bit more. You've often said for many years now we're a red state, but more deeply than that, the demographics that Democrats suddenly are saying are shifting out from under our feet unless we do something. Talk about where Republicans made inroads.
You know, Florida Democrats have been falling apart ever since 1998 when Jeb Bush won election and the Republican Party started the takeover of the state legislature and a lot of local races around the country. And I think part of the problem was that you had a lot of Democrats who still thought this was 1960s, 1970s Florida, where, you know, the Hispanic population was largely a Cuban activist population. The other, you know, Venezuelans, Colombians, Puerto Ricans were still in relatively small numbers. Haitians were still in relatively small numbers. They counted a lot on retired Jewish voters in Palm Beach County and Broward County who were union workers, and you know, they were the guys that in Century Village and Kings Point and all those places, they still followed the idea that you got the palm card that told you who to vote for on election day, and you went and did that. And it almost like over the last 25, 30 years, they didn't notice the tremendous changes we were having in demographics and in political attitudes, and they just have been struggling to find candidates who understood the changes, who were a little more middle of the road on some things, and And I think they're continuing to struggle, and they're going to struggle for some years to come.
And Antonio, you talked about Florida being a bellwether. It could have also been the canary in the coal mine for national Democrats. What did Republicans get, not just in this cycle, but what have they been getting that Democrats weren't or aren't in Florida, and by extension, in the rest of the nation?
One word: aspirations. Particularly when you talk about the Hispanic vote in Florida. And I've heard this from strategists for quite a while. And that is that when Republicans speak to Hispanic voters, they're talking about aspirations. Democrats come in and say, well, you know what? You're really struggling. You need Obamacare. You need these government programs that we're providing. And I've spoken to a lot of voters say, yeah, it's great, but I'm aspiring to way more. So in other words, I'll take your government program, but I'm going to vote for the Republican. And that's one of the things that I think has really struck them. And by the way, the other area that they're really starting to lose is with younger voters. There is a generational clash.
And an economic message intertwined in all of that aspirational message.
Yes, of course.
The economy
it is
so huge this year.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is the economy, but it's way more than inflation. It is aspirations. It is that I want to be there, and when they see the Republican Party, particularly Trump, that's what they're aspiring to.
What about you talk about aspirationally, and a lot of that theme you just talked about, pocketbook issues, which are the core, and it was the economy stupid, and many strategists are saying he clearly won on the economy, on border security. As we pick up on those themes, first, Brian, President-elect Trump, and you, again, I can't count how many times you've said to me over the years, say whatever you will, positive or negative, but he has a finger on the pulse of how to boil issues down. It's the economy, it's border security, and a lot of people who thought Hispanics and black voters would be turned off by that were not. Why did he get that where Democrats didn't? And within that question, what do Democrats in this state do, and by extension the nation, if they hope to get back on track?
Well, Democrats have this bad habit of they want to talk about the consumer price index. Donald Trump during the election talked about groceries and specifically used the word groceries. The price of groceries has gone up. If I become president, the price of groceries will go down.
Which, by the way, he just said last week, he may not be able to influence.
And where Democrats tended to talk at this PhD level of the economy, people don't relate to that, as I've said probably more often than I should, but it's gas prices, it's what the cost of milk is, it's, and Democrats need to do a better job of talking about the issues that the average American cares about. And I also think that Republicans made a lot of headway with their anti-woke agenda. Rightly or wrongly, people were getting tired of a lot of that stuff. I think there were even a lot of Democrats who may not have said it out loud, but they're like, enough. We need to slow down with some of this woke stuff. And
but you'd read articles where Hispanics said, I don't care about being called Latinx. I need to make sure that I can feed my kids and get some good schooling in the community safe. But those were real articles. Your thought, too, on where Democrats need to wake up. I read a recent article that said the problem, Antonio, is that in Florida and elsewhere, Democrats, and I'm quoting here, want to preach, Republicans want to win.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are all kinds of slogans out there, but I think
does that one have some credence to it?
It probably doesn't, but I think the more devastating ad that the Republicans had this election was the one that was, Harris and the Democrats are for they, them, and Trump and Vance are for you. And I think that was like one of the best lines that I heard this entire campaign. And look, I think it speaks to a lot of, I think there was by the Democrats, there was almost like a misreading of that 2022 midterm election, where there was supposed to have been this red tsunami that never materialized. And I think Democrats saw that and thought, oh, issues of personal liberty are going to be way more important. Things like the abortion issue, which is important, but I don't think we can say at the end of this that it was decisive, that was a determinative issue. The economy was. And I think what voters were telling Democrats in 2022, and you look at those, is, at least what I was hearing is, we're unhappy with the way things are. We're not ready to go back to the previous team. But you got 2 years of fixes. And 2 years later, they really had not fixed it. And not only that, they didn't really address that.
And conversely, the same kind of challenge for the president-elect.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's going to be impatience. There's a lot of impatience out there with prices and the economy and so forth. I do think, however, if you look at where polling is right now, I think one of the most interesting polls right now is the 538 popularity rating. 4 years ago almost, as he was leaving the White House, then President Trump was like 20 points underwater in popularity. In that 538 average, he's now even, just about even. Wow. So it tells you that there's something else going on besides just the economy, that I think this country is kind of they see Donald Trump very differently than they did 4 years ago, and I think that's going to buy him some time.
Briefly, and then we'll go to break.
You used the word poll. I'm shocked.
Yeah. There are some good ones out there, my friend.
Not many.
Says he.
Yeah, no, I think the problem with polling is that people misread the poll.
Well, we'll continue that discussion on the other side of the break as well. Two of the very best, and we'll be back with more from Brian and Antonio Fens next.